Hey everyone, California and I might add many urban areas in the United States, including where I am here in Atlanta and I also live in Oakland, have enormous homeless problems, enormous populations and growing. And in the California situation, State Senator Scott Wiener, District 11, San Francisco, has advanced a kind of piece of legislation called SB or Senate Bill 50. And the idea of Senate Bill 50 is to encourage what is called transit-oriented development by allowing the municipality to relax their standard zoning laws in favor of upzoning laws, laws that encourage, when I say denser housing, I simply mean more housing on the same acreage of land, let's say 4 or 5 or 6 acres. So something called the floor area ratio, if it's, let's say, 2.5 to 1 or something, could be raised up so that you could have more units. The idea is that if you're able to build more units of housing, a percentage of those will be affordable. That's the theory. The trouble is that actual practice does not support a theory that was true in the 20th century, but not true in the 21st century. And because when, particularly in the Bay Area parlance, high density housing has been developed, it has attracted large numbers of persons representing foreign direct investment, people from other countries that look at real estate in the Bay Area as an investment property. They may not live there much, they have the keys. And that has contributed overall to the high housing cost problem enormously, and by relationship to the homeless problem that Oakland and San Francisco have been just devastated by, all right? So Wiener still consistently pushes this, and his proponents say that, and this is what I find particularly troublesome, they call regulations incentives. The way SB 50 works is you, the developer, have to want to develop or build affordable housing in an area around, let's say, a BART station, Bay Area Rapid Transit Station, or a LA subway station, all right? You have to want to do that. And then when you express that desire procedurally, then the municipality is to essentially replace its standard laws, zoning laws, with the high density allowance provisions so that you can build on that. Now note, what I said to you just then doesn't mention anything about a monetary incentive. So if we're in a situation, which we are, where the cost to build housing is high and getting higher, what incentive would a developer have to want to build high density housing and then have a percentage of that housing, let's say 20% low or affordable or low income, ideally? Where would that be? Proponents say, well, there's the incentive. They call the regulation the incentive. I'm not kidding you. I had a fellow named Ari Isaac write that in a comment to my first blog post on this subject of SB 50. I about jumped out of my chair. So the problem is that there is no monetary incentive. Prior to 2012, we had something called California Redevelopment Law. And to make a long story short, Oakland, as one example of many, had an affordable housing budget in 2011 alone of $111 million just for that year, okay? And California as a whole had a very healthy affordable housing industry. Had then California Governor Jerry Brown not worked to kill redevelopment, which is what he did, we would not have had the tremendous homeless problem we have today in 2019. In the elapsed time, we've had elected officials who've forgotten that you have to offer a monetary incentive, a carrot at the end of the stick to get the horse to walk, to bite. That's been forgotten. So what I'm doing here, I'm about to do, is I'm showing you how an incentive would work. And within this system dynamics model, this diagram I'm presenting, I'm going to explain to you where SB 50 falls short and why you should not support it at all. This is a diagram of system dynamics. For those of you who don't understand it, system dynamics, very quickly, without going too much in the history, consists of what are called stock variables, and then inflow variables, like this one, for example, and then also outflow variables, and then also converter variables, all right? It's a way of showing relationships between actions and activities within a system. In this case, what I'm showing is a system interrelationship which causes the development of more affordable housing under an incentive program that's driven by what's called tax increment financing, or TIF. Okay, so we have annual assessed value for an area we designate. So let's say we designate an area of around the BART station, okay? And so we designate an area around the BART station. We say we're looking to draw this, take a map and draw this boundary based on our research, where we find a series of properties that are in total worth $150 million. That's our base year assessed value, all right? Net property tax collected would go to the redevelopment agency from that area around the BART station only, okay, nowhere else, all right? So that sets up our tax increment financing collection, and that goes into, if you times property tax rate here, all right, that becomes our affordable housing fund. That affordable housing fund is expended whenever it causes the creation of affordable housing developers. Because we have the fund, it attracts people who we, in reality, would have an office that would go and attract the developers and request for proposals, of course, right? But we would create these affordable housing developers, this increased stock. As we do that, we have the rate of new, we call the rate of new projects per developer. The more developers we have, the greater the rate, theoretically, of new projects per developer. So this would be a sort of a rising function like that, all right? Times the number of developers. That gives us, guess what, our affordable housing stock, okay? Now, some over time get converted or demolished. Obviously, this rate is much smaller than this. Then we have population demand here. So obviously, if this is at 0, this times the population demand makes this 0. What is this? This is actually the number of people we're housing or not housing. So the way it works is like this. If we have a positive relationship, where we have a lot of affordable housing that is meeting this demand, that becomes a positive number, and this stock increases. However, if it's negative, this negative number is converted here to the unhoused, a percentage of which are homeless. You understand how that works? Now, where does SB 50 fit in all this? Here's the problem with SB 50. There's nothing here. The developer has to want to come in and have the financing from someplace, not explained. Not explained at all. It's not explained at all where that could come from. And basically want to develop affordable housing. Now, someone out there would say, well, it is explained. It says that it comes from a percentage of the developer's own revenue. So in other words, a high-end housing developer has to want to use a percentage of their own revenue, basically cut off their own nose in spite of their face. That is actually a disincentive. You want proof? 181 Fremont in San Francisco. One of my opponents on this used that. I used it as an example. They said I was wrong, and here's why. and they said that it had a 20% set aside. That person didn't read their own example. The developers paid, I believe, $15 million to get out of building affordable housing at 181 Fremont, which is also Facebook's downtown San Francisco headquarters. And hey, can anyone tell me if the fee was actually used to build affordable housing someplace else? And if so, where in San Francisco? I don't know. No one knows. If someone knows, they haven't told us. So there, right there is an example of why the current legislation doesn't work. We have forgotten how to use financing incentives as a tool to get developers to build certain projects a certain way. Ari said in my comments, he says, well, the incentives are right there. It calls for you to develop this percentage and it's all here. No, that's not the point. That's not an incentive. That's a regulation. Many of the people I've heard talk about this confuse regulations with incentives. Regulations are not incentives. Regulations are reasons, are call for you to do something, and they more often than not provide disincentives. There are two in Scott Wiener's legislation. There's no financial incentive to want to build affordable housing. And then because of the requirement for affordable housing, it heaps upon the project an additional disincentive. So you have two. There's no financial incentive to begin with, and you start squeezing on the developer, which becomes an additional disincentive. Do you think anybody's just going to sort of walk in and say, I'm here, and I'm Mr. Rich Bags developer, and I'm going to spend my money as you say because it just seems like a good idea. You seem like a good person? That's a laugh. Not happening. So that's why you need to not support SB 50. And we need to go back to modeling out how policies work on paper. Learn system dynamics. Learn it. Run spreadsheets. Do that. Don't just say, I'm a progressive. Because I'm out here. You have people say, I'm a conservative. Look, these labels are becoming proxies for logical, reasoned, detailed thinking. Stop doing it. Stop it. You're ruining people's lives. We got to turn our brains on and get back to good policy formation. Time to start is right now.